AFIO Now is presented by Northwest Financial Advisors, where our world revolves around you.
This is Jim Hughes. We are a program of recorded interviews with former U.S. intelligence officers and those who write about them. And today I am delighted to have someone who is both. James Wolff grew up in Beirut, lived in Damascus, Cairo, and Istanbul, was a British intelligence officer for over 10 years, and has become an accomplished author. His first three novels, Beside the Syrian Sea, How to Betray Your Country, and The Man in the Corduroy Suit, all won critical acclaim. More recently, he has a brand new novel out entitled Spies and Other Gods, which I have just finished and thoroughly enjoyed. James, welcome to AFIO Now.
Thank you very much.
James, how does a former British intelligence officer get approval to write a novel? Is there tension in that relationship?
Well, I think can be a more difficult process than it needs to be. I think there's a healthy tension and there's an unhealthy tension. I think the healthy tension arises because as a novelist, I want to tell a full and complete story, and I want to share things with readers that they may not have encountered elsewhere. The unhealthy side of it, I think, is that the agencies obviously are very, very keen to hold on to information, and I think they're very concerned about a drip effect where someone releases a piece of information that looks innocuous, but that when accumulated, when placed alongside other pieces of information, it can add up to an insight that someone might gain about an agency and how it works. I know that the same tension, the same issues exist in the US with former CIA officers who are now writing novels. I mean, my own journey towards publication has often felt like quite a difficult one, quite a fraught one. It took about 16 months to get the manuscript approved for Spies and Other Gods. In some cases, I felt that the agencies here in the UK were doing the right thing and doing what they should do and what it was their responsibility to do. But I, to be perfectly honest with you, there were certainly moments where I felt that there was something a little bit obstructive about their process, and that perhaps they didn't really want to encourage people in my position to publish novels of this kind.
I can share with you that CIA officers on this side of the pond have very similar reactions with the process that we have here. James, does it help to be a former spy when you're writing a spy novel? Is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
Well, I think there are so many very good spy novelists who don't have any experience or any direct experience of spying. So I would imagine that it's not a prerequisite. But I think in my particular case, there's no way I would have ended up writing spy novels if I hadn't been a spy myself. The reason for that, I think, is that I probably would have assumed from the outside that the profession was about the things that we see depicted on our screens, that it was about car chases and fistfights and gun battles and the like. But I think my 15 years on the inside taught me that it's all about psychology. It's all about character. It's all about motive. It's all about relationship building. It's about all of that stuff that makes drama so rich. And I think it was only going through that experience myself that led me to this position where I thought actually a spy story would be a very good framework for telling a story that's very rich in drama.
James, the book is narrated by the spirit of spying. What does that mean?
Well, good question. I've been very interested for a while now in the idea that organizations have an identity of their own, or almost a character of their own, in the way that you have a character and I have a character. And I think I first started thinking about this when I would watch crises unfold in the media involving organizations or corporations, big companies. And these organizations would be accused of doing terrible things. But when you see the CEO or the person who's put up to represent that organization, it's very hard sometimes to match up the individual people with the enormity of the terrible things that the organization has done. And it started me thinking that perhaps there is a new identity that comes into creation, that comes into being when a group of people come together under the umbrella of an organization to do something. The organization I worked for in British intelligence, and I imagine this is true of the CIA as well, the organizations feel to me that they have characters. They're a bit cranky. They're a bit defensive. They can be quite obstructive. They're also quite funny at times. Great fun to be around. These are fun places to work, but they don't always feel, or didn't to me always feel like particularly healthy places to work. And it really is a short step from thinking that an organization has a character to thinking that an organization is a character. And as soon as I made that little mental leap, I started thinking that it would be great fun to actually have an organization itself narrate a story with all of the quirkiness and crankiness that defines my former employers and possibly yours as well. I wouldn't want to speak for you.
Introduce to our audience some of the main characters in Spies and Other Gods.
Well, the organization is headed by a man called Sir William Rentoul, who is really at the tail end of a long and very successful career. He's obviously risen to the very top and has had numerous successes along the way. But he's in a phase of crisis, I suppose. His wife has recently died. His retirement is on the horizon. And he's starting to experience what the book calls a brain fog. He's just having a little bit of difficulty remembering names, faces, dates, and he feels that his mental abilities are slipping away from him. And it causes him considerable distress. And the way he chooses to address that is to go back into the field one last time. I mean, it's something that it maybe for someone who worked in this area, it's very hard to imagine. I've certainly never encountered it in my career. The people who head up our organizations are in boardrooms. They're speaking to prime ministers and presidents, and they're on the plane here, on the plane there. But I thought it'd be very interesting in this book to take someone like that, who's at the very pinnacle of the profession, and have them drop right down back into a field role and see if they can regain some of that sort of youthful experience that they had. In Sir William's case, it's really about trying to, recharge dying cells or have one last profound experience that will bring him back to life in some way. So he's a principal character in the book. I suppose he is set against a young woman called Aphra McQueen, who is introduced in the book as a researcher, a parliamentary researcher. And she is sent into the agency, into the service, to investigate a complaint that has come from one of the officers who work there, an anonymous complaint. So her job is really, as an outsider, to dig into the agency, the service, what it's been doing, try and work out what's really happened. And along the way, she encounters various obstacles because obviously the service is reluctant to let an outsider look at the crown jewels. As the story unfolds, it becomes apparent that she has a whole other set of motives. And as the book really gets going, then she takes off in unexpected directions and pursues a set of objectives that we really weren't aware of at the beginning of the book.
What was the Harlem Working Group and why was it formed?
Well, the backdrop of the book is a series of murders that have taken place across Europe of Iranian dissidents. And because the murders have taken place in various different European capitals, a working group is brought together to address this. And this is the Harlem Working Group in the novel. So the representatives of intelligence agencies in France and Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, various other places, and the UK. So this is a cross-country, cross-continent group of agencies trying to work together, largely failing, it should be said, but trying to work together to piece together the information they have in order to catch this Iranian assassin before they strike again.
What was Aphra McQueen's motive in going to the dentist?
Well, I think we're slightly straying into spoiler territory if I talk too much about her motivation. But at the beginning, I think we meet her as someone who's diligent and determined and forensic and very determined to get to the bottom of this. But as she is obstructed and as she is forced to improvise, she goes off in unexpected directions. And we realize, I think, later on in the book that she's got a whole other very personal set of motivations for what she's doing.
James, after your evacuation from Beirut in 1982, did that motivate you to go into spying?
Well, I had a very happy, a very colourful childhood growing up in Lebanon. And I mean, it's very hard to trace back decisions that one makes in adulthood to childhood in any kind of direct or literal sense. But I'm in no doubt that in some way it did contribute towards it. I mean, my childhood, as perhaps yours, Jim, was filled with travel. It was filled with languages. It was filled with different landscapes, with people from a multitude of countries. One direct experience of spying I did have when I was a child is that there was, in the neighborhood that we lived in Beirut, there was a very distinctive and colorful homeless man who lived in a kind of street shelter, and everyone in the neighborhood knew him, and he would chat to the local soldiers and swap cigarettes with them, and he'd tousle our hair as we walked past, and everyone thought he was a little bit touched in the head. He'd been in the sun a bit too long. He was just a harmless crank. But in 1982, when the Israelis invaded Lebanon, word spread around the neighborhood like wildfire that this individual had been sitting astride the first Israeli tank that rolled into Beirut. I mean, I've never been able to get to the bottom of the story since, but the story goes that all this time he was an Israeli agent or an Israeli spy who was playing this role in order to pick up gossip from soldiers and know exactly where they're positioned and what equipment they have and what the gossip on the street is. So, I mean, it's hard to know, as I said, but I like to think that some early seeds, some early interest in spying was planted at that moment.
That's a great story. When I was in Beirut in the early to mid-'70s, studying Arabic at the Foreign Service Institute's overseas branch, was the famous Israeli raid into South Beirut and assassinated a number of PLO officials. And the leader of that raid was at Barak. And they were dressed up as couples, and Barak was actually dressed up as a woman.
So audacious.
So there are some great stories. Well, this has been a great pleasure. The name of the book is Spies and Other Gods. I recommend it to you all, and I want to thank James Wolff for a great interview.
Thanks, Jim. It was very nice to talk to you.
AFIO is a small, non-profit, apolitical, educational organization whose main mission is to help prepare the next generation of intelligence officers to confront the challenges our nation faces in the years ahead. To learn more or support our outreach programs, visit www.afio.com.